All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to be exploring a deeply personal and honestly a pretty confusing world. What it's really like emotionally for children of mothers with borderline personality disorder. And we're going to be looking at this whole thing entirely from the child's point of view, based on our source material. Wow, I mean, this quote really just sets the stage, doesn't it? It perfectly captures that intense, overwhelming, and kind of inescapable feeling that defines this relationship. We're not just talking about a difficult parent here. This is about a fundamental threat to the child's own sense of self, and it's coming from the one person who's supposed to be their safe harbor. So for these kids, one of the first and most fundamental lessons they learn is that home is not a safe place. It's a world of contradiction, where the very ground beneath their feet feels completely unstable. And the source material uses this incredibly powerful metaphor to describe that feeling. It's like being Alice in Wonderland. Life becomes this trip down the rabbit hole, into a bizarre, illogical world where absolutely nothing makes sense, and the rules are always, always changing. This whole idea is really captured in the term make-believe mothers. The child often sees their mother not as a real whole person, but more like a collection of shifting characters. One minute she's a helpless little waif, the next she's a raging witch. They're just characters in a super confusing story, not a reliable parent. But here's the thing. This feeling of complete and utter chaos isn't just random. There's actually a clinical pattern behind it. So to really understand the why of it all, we've got to take a look at the formal definition of the disorder itself. The foundation of this entire experience is borderline personality disorder, or BPD for short. It's really defined by a trio of traits. You've got the emotional instability, the impulsivity, and this really, really intense fear of abandonment that, as you'll see, drives so much of the behavior. And this isn't some rare condition, not at all. According to the source, about 6 million Americans are affected by BPD. Just think about that for a second. That means the number of children living in these kinds of environments could be absolutely staggering. So these core traits, they show up in pretty clear ways, right? The volatility and the mood swings, the impulsivity and rash decisions, and even self-destructive behaviors. But underneath it all, there's always that one profound driving fear: abandonment. Okay, so with that clinical picture in our minds, let's go back to the child's perspective. How does this actually feel day to day? Well, the single feeling that really defines their whole existence is just constant uncertainty. I mean, just try to imagine what this means for a kid. One minute, there are zero rules. The next, there are these super rigid ones that just came out of nowhere. A loving hug can turn into a nasty verbal attack in a split second with no warning at all. This complete lack of consistency is devastating because, as the source material points out, that's the one thing a child needs to build a foundation of trust and security. When you live in that kind of unpredictable world, it makes one thing totally impossible. When you can't rely on your primary caregiver, that fundamental bond of trust just never gets a chance to form. And here we are right back in Wonderland. The child is constantly being asked to believe impossible things, like that a sweet, loving moment didn't just happen, or that a terrible fit of rage wasn't real. Eventually, the only logical conclusion is that you can't trust what you see or what you're told. You just can't trust your mother. The source material lays out several reasons why this trust is just systematically destroyed. The mother might manipulate situations, or she might flat out lie and distort reality. She overreacts to the smallest things, and she invades the child's privacy. Each of these actions is like another crack in the foundation of the relationship, until the whole thing just crumbles. Now this next part, this is one of the most isolating and frankly maddening parts of the experience for the child. The person they experience in private is almost never the person that the rest of the world sees. This is that stark divide that is so isolating. In public, the mother's often charming, engaging, the life of the party. But behind closed doors, the child lives with a volatile and completely unpredictable reality. It leaves them feeling totally alone. I mean, who would ever believe them when their private experience is so completely invalidated by that public facade? An entire childhood spent like this doesn't just vanish when you grow up. It leaves a lasting psychological mark, an emotional inheritance that the child carries deep into their adult life.
So, what is that inheritance? Well, it's a heavy bag to carry, full of intense emotions. There's shame from believing something is fundamentally wrong with them. There's chronic anxiety from always walking on eggshells. There's guilt for their mother's unhappiness. And so often there's this deep, buried rage.
So, we end on this question from the source material. It's not just about looking back at a dark and painful past. The entire goal of understanding these dynamics, of naming the chaos, of defining the experience, and of validating the child's reality is to create the possibility of a different, brighter future for themselves. It's all about seeing the past clearly, so it no longer has to define what comes next.